Oh, wow. That was quick. All right. Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah insider for KSL Sports. That's Josh Bennett. Bennett, man, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. Things kind of slowed down, so you get to pay attention to some other things in life, like basketball. So no, it's been good. Basketball's been fun. There's some of these games, like there's moments where you get into them, you feel something. So it's good to feel something on the Runnin' Utes front again. So I've been enjoying some of that.
Dude, how about that, dude? The conversation is starting to pick up. It's been a lot of fun, and obviously, over the weekend, Utah BYU, that was a surprisingly fun game until the last 10 minutes or so for Utah. And Alex was not too happy with the way that game ended for his squad. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they respond this weekend against Oklahoma State. And again, just want to emphasize the message from everybody on social media: show up to the game, show up, show out, enjoy yourself. Like, I'll tell you this, right? Like, obviously, you see the win-loss record, you see Utah's 9-11. If you're on social media, that sort of thing, you see a lot of discussion about the team, and it's not always pretty, it's not always fun. But I'll say this about this group: it's an entertaining brand of ball if you like offense. This team, it's good, clean execution on the offensive end. It's just there are, unfortunately, some issues that this team just won't be able to address this season because of injury and other things where, the one thing that has been their bugaboo all season long isn't going to suddenly improve over the next, couple of months. So, enjoy this team for what it is. It's a team that is, I think Alex has done a great job of developing and maximizing on the offensive end, and they're making, they're getting better defensively. Just it's not going to be what Utah fans would expect. And I think there's going to be a major point of emphasis for Alex and Wes, this offseason of improving on those deficiencies. And I think we'll see a much improved Runnin' Utes squad next season. But we could say that every time. But again, show up to the game Saturday, Oklahoma State, Utah. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, can't wait. I'll be at the Huntsman's on Saturday afternoon. Last game against TCU, got a W. Oklahoma State, not an impossible task. Get another one of those. That's 2 wins in a row at home. Like, that's something. Like, that's all you're looking for this year's building blocks. But speaking of building blocks and things like that, we got football to talk about. Got the blocks that that went away, the blocks that were added, and all of that stuff. I think we're here to talk about the class, the portal class. Let's put a bow on.
We definitely are. Yeah, it's been a minute. We haven't been able to talk football for a little bit. We've been talking a little bit of basketball and some other things, some other topics. But this one, wanted to get together, wanted to record an episode where we basically, go through Utah's transfer portal haul and assess what Utah was able to do in the transfer portal and kind of talk about, some of the bigger picture questions about what's happened over the last month and what Utah's been able to do. So excited for that. But before we get into that, Utah baseball, they're going to be cutting the ribbon on their new baseball field Wednesday afternoon. I'll be up there at the ribbon cutting ceremony at 2 p.m. I know they're going to be giving guided tours for the facility later that evening. I know some folks are going to be showing up at 5 p.m. And I'll tell you this, man, I just drove by it tonight. After the women's game tonight, who also upset number 22 West Virginia. So shout out to the women's basketball squad getting a top 25 victory at home. That baseball facility, the new stadium, it's going to be nice. It's going to be fun. I hope that Utah baseball, now that it's on campus, that's a sport that I hope starts to see also an increase in interest among the fans and all of that. It's a great facility. It's going to be awesome for fans to get up there and check it out. I know that this is a program that wants to be more competitive, and with this stadium, it's going to be awesome. So looking forward to that tomorrow, which if you're listening to this, it's going to be later today or earlier today, depending on when you listen. But enough of all of this. Let's get into the transfer portal talk, Bennett. Let's get to it. So let's start just in general, right? When you look at Utah's class and what they were able to bring in, how would you assess what Utah was able to do, all things considered, right? Just how was Utah able to do? How did they perform in the portal this year?
Yeah, I think all things considered, amongst turmoil, there's a lot going on. A lot of just figuring out what coaches are going to be here, which ones aren't. Selling the vision to guys isn't a given, right? And for everything to come together the way it did, I thought it was a job well done. And I feel the strategy was this year to go and grab potential that's headed in a positive direction, as opposed to grabbing something that maybe isn't working out here, isn't working out here. Grabbing guys that are on the rise instead of guys that are on the fall. I like that, and you see some of that, and I think the staff really trust their ability to develop, and you see that in some of these signings. So looking at it, a lot of intriguing signings, and I think they helped a lot of position groups get better. So
yeah, I think the word that you're a good word to kind of summarize what the point of emphasis was this cycle was production, right? Production, experience. You look at the bulk of what Utah brought in, all of these guys, the majority of these guys, I should say, are guys that have significant amount of production to their name. And, so I think that was a big point of emphasis this cycle, and probably for good reason. Because I'm going to ask you a question here, right? Given what transpired, right? Kyle Whittingham stepping down, and it's seeming like, this was going to be a pretty sweet transition, right? Kyle stepping down, Morgan stepping up. It seemed like Jason Beck, everybody, defense was going to be sticking around, and Utah was going to run it back with Morgan at the helm in 2026 with everybody coming back. It seemed like Utah was going to be able to be pretty aggressive. And then December 26th happens. Kyle Whittingham accepts the Michigan job, and everything changed. And so let me throw this to you, Bennett. How much should we have recalibrated our expectations during this portal cycle with a coaching transition as significant as the one that Utah went through this cycle?
Yeah, no, you absolutely have to adjust your expectations as the team, the program needs to adjust its sights, right? All of a sudden, with Kyle going to Michigan, you got to play defense with your players first and foremost. You just went 10-2. You capped it with an awesome bowl win. You feel like you've got the quarterback situation figured out, which is always the biggest question mark. And it's like, how do we keep as much of a 10-win squad together as possible? And that's what's first and foremost. So it's a lot harder to keep your guys when their coaches are going somewhere else. So you saw some of that attrition that was probably not going to be there in the first place. JJ Buchanan, probably still a Ute. Jonah Leia is probably still a Ute. Smith Snowden, probably still a Ute, right? John Henry Daly, maybe there's a way. You can go on and on. These guys that go to Michigan, the high school kid that Maui.
Yeah. You already forgot his name. Wow, that's impressive.
Finally landed at his home in Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And, so all of these guys probably not going to Michigan, probably staying at Utah, maybe looking at other places, drawing some interest, but ultimately, staying within, a realm of possibility. So yeah, I'm to land this plane. It made it incredibly more difficult to put together a class because you had guys going to Michigan.
Yeah. No, I think, when you're talking about how much fans should have recalibrated expectations for what Utah was going to do in the transfer portal, I'd say it was probably more than we want to admit, but certainly less than the worst of us fear, right? It's more than we're comfortable saying, but less than the doomsdayers want you to believe. And I think it's been so interesting with this whole transition, right? Because you're just used to things being done a certain way because Kyle's been at the helm for 2 decades. We've all just become accustomed to things and how they do things. And, with this transition, it's a significant change that impacted Utah beyond just, losing an offensive coordinator, an offensive line coach, a defensive end coach, and a handful of players. It impacted so much more than that doesn't get discussed. But I think, for your point as well, just to echo it, this was about stabilizing as much of your roster as you possibly could instead of, hemorrhaging players to the transfer portal, which was sort of our expectation, right? After the Las Vegas Bowl, we talked to people and they were saying 30, 40 players are going to hit the portal.
Before even getting off the field, you come over and you're like,
I'll never forget it. The guy I talked to, man, there were tears. There were tears as he talked about like what was going to happen. Like he was trying to stay in the moment and, was just kind of sad at what was potentially to come. And so I think, there was a significant belief that it was going to be pretty ugly, pretty bad, that there were going to be a large number of players. And so for Utah and Morgan Scalley and Colton Swan, and, once he got his staff in place, I really think that helped kind of just really stabilize things, right? I think, Utah did a tremendous job, a surprisingly good job at player retention. They held on to a good chunk of this roster, which allowed them to then go into the portal and do some work, add some pieces. Now, maybe, with all of the change, it sort of changed our expectations in terms of what they were looking for and what they were prioritizing. And we'll talk more about that, throughout the show. But I think, in terms of what Utah just went through, transitioning from Kyle Whittingham, going to Michigan, Morgan Scalley taking over, I think it definitely altered Utah's plans going into the portal from what it could have been had Kyle just sailed off into the sunset into then what it became with, everybody following, Witt that chose to. And so, for Scalley, like that's part of the job, right? You gotta adapt on the fly. And I think, again, they did a good job retaining the players that they did. They did a good job getting into the portal and addressing needs. And that's what we're here to talk about. So, all right, dude, let's start breaking down some of these positions. I'm going to throw some other questions your way that we can discuss to kind of break up, the position by position, slog that it can turn into sometimes. But let's start with quarterback. And obviously in the transfer portal, they didn't bring anybody, but they held on to their 2 dudes. And I think that is, above all else, huge for Utah. Maybe the most important, player retention addition that Utah could have made is bringing back both Devon Dampier and Byrd Ficklin. What do you make of what Utah was able to do hanging on to those 2 guys?
Yeah, couldn't have done better. Kind of heard all along, right? We hear these things all along that Utah's going to be able to keep both. It feels good about keeping both, and it one of those too good to be true, and then it's true. And so yeah, like no, too good to be true. It's that's how good it is.
Yeah, it was all over the place though for those couple of weeks going through it, man. It was, it seemed like every hour it seemed to change, right? Where, Utah's bringing back both. Oh, they're losing Dev, but they're hanging on to Byrd. Bird's going to take Dev's money. They're going to go into the portal, look for another quarterback. Oh, they're bringing both back. now both are leaving. Like it was that for almost 2 weeks. And again with Byrd and Dev, given the situation, Jason Beck leaving, I think that was obviously a curveball that not everybody had, on the bingo card this cycle last month prior to to everything that went down in the month of December. But I think to hold on to those two players was huge, right? Those guys are going to be the face of the program. Dev, the significant face of the team next year. Byrd, potentially the face, a prominent face next year, and even bigger beyond next season, which is significant. So to have stability at the most important position, I think is huge for Utah. It's going to allow them to continue to build upon it. And so I think that was huge, right? So they didn't go into the portal. They didn't add anybody. Isaac Wilson entered the portal, which is what all of us anticipated given what Utah was bringing back with Byrd and Dev. And so to lose Isaac, you thank him for what he was able to do 2024. But it is what it is. Utah's got their guys at the quarterback spot, and they're going to move forward and feel good about Dev and Byrd. So I think that was significant to hang on to those two guys.
Would have been happy to keep just one.
Yeah, no, right? Yeah.
And absolutely. Isaac landing at Colorado, that'll be good for him.
Yeah, I think so. It's an interesting destination for him, given what Colorado already has at quarterback there with Julian Lewis. But maybe he gives him a run for his money. We'll see.
So sometimes they like to go just sling happy, and that can be kind of his game. And we'll see. But for sure, thought he was going. I thought something like Utah State made a lot of sense. Like, hey,
shoot.
Starting, yeah.
I thought Weber State, dude. I thought he was going to go join Coach Kerr up at Weber State and just dominate. That's what I was thinking.
Do a year of domination, and and then off you go. Yeah.
All right. Let's transition to the other backfield spot, running back. Utah wasn't too active here, but I think landed a guy that I think once you started to dive into his game and his numbers, production, and what he's about, I think there's a lot of excitement where this could be a sneaky good addition for Utah. Adding Steve Chavez Soto from San Jose State, was a freshman last year, so he's got multiple years of eligibility. Big time, a very valuable addition for Utah. And the only player that they lost to the portal was Racing Guillory, who, he was a reclassified 2026 or 2025 freshman, where he was just a year too young to really count on him last season. He transferred to LSU. I think there's a relationship there with a coach or somebody on staff at LSU that made that doable. But I think going out and adding Chavez Soto to kind of be that complement to Wayshawn like Nakari Rogers was, feels like a bit of an upgrade when you compare Chavez Soto to Nakari. Kind of feel good about what they did there, finding a guy like him at San Jose State and bringing him in to be a complement.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he's able to do. I always give me a bruiser running back. As Zach Moss put it, I like the guys that want to make the defender make a business decision. Like that business decision, he's this kind of back. So I'm always excited for that. And I think what they did with the running back room speaks a lot to what they think they've got in LaMarcus Bell too. So very excited to see what he is. And
I'm interested with Wayshawn getting into year 3 as a running back. Like, what does his workload look like, right? Is Utah going to continue to, keep the gate on him, right? Where not the gate, but just kind of monitor his workload, limit his touches early on in the season, so you get into the second half of the schedule, and He's running fresh. I'm curious now that as he gets into year 3, how much better condition is he going to be to handle a bigger workload?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to call out. And you look at how Utah approached the running back room this year. They featured Wayshawn more as the season went on, and the games were more meaningful and stuff like that. And they kept him like healthy for that home stretch, right? I guess every game's meaningful when you put the total season together, but it was, it felt like they managed the backfield's workload extremely effective this past season.
Yeah,
you look at years before, you get buried in injuries, and then all of a sudden it gets a little weird. So, I think Wayshawn will hit that 1,000-yard mark, but I don't think it's going to be from like any like over usage. I think they'll use some committee approach.
Yeah. So again, getting back to the portal with the addition of Steve Chavez Soto, finished his freshman year with 448 yards, 7 touchdowns, a 5.1 yard per carry average, where I think almost 3 yards of that came after contact, just to kind of give you an idea of the type of runner that he is. He is a physical runner. He's going to be able to be that N'Keary Rodgers type to complement, the Wayshawn, Daniel Bray, LaMarcus Bell, and factoring that all in. So when you look at what Chavez Soto brings to the table and how it fits with the running back group, what grade would you give that addition of Chavez Soto?
I'll give it a B plus. I don't want to over embellish it, but I don't want to downplay it either. He's a powerful runner. You look at his numbers. He's not the volume guy, but he's that between the tackles guy that, as you said, like it gives you what N'Keary Rodgers has. It replaces that and potentially better. So we'll see how that plays out. And I think it's what you needed. It's absolutely what you needed to complement Wayshawn and keep him healthy and keep him out of defensive tackles' harm's way.
Yeah. All right. Let's transition to wide receiver, because I think this is a pretty significant talking point here. So, given what transpired with Kyle Whittingham moving to Michigan, Utah unfortunately lost a big part of this wide receiver group projected for next year in JJ Buchanan and Celeste Moa. Both of guys were going to be counted on to produce, but Utah, I think, responded well. Obviously the timing, it's not exact. Like obviously they had JJ and Braden and Kyrie all kind of happened in the same week, where it seemed like everything was trending towards JJ hitting the portal, and then Celeste happened, I think, a couple weeks later. So the timing obviously is different, but given what Utah brought in, Braden Pagan and Kyrie Scholes, what were your thoughts as Utah landed those two players?
That's exciting. Like it shows Utah putting some emphasis on that room. There's a lot of focus in upgrading the room, and you lose a guy like JJ, that's going to sting. Ryan Davis, you lose him to graduation. That's a little different, but there's still a lot of production that needs to be replaced there. To bring in a Kyrie Scholes, who produced at a pretty high level with San Jose State, 59 catches, 768 yards this past season, and then to bring in Pagan, who's another 900 yards. I'd have to pull up his stats right in front of, but
I think it was 926 and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, to bring in that proven production at the wide receiver spot is awesome. And to lose a guy like Moa, you don't know what he's going to be as a true freshman on the football field. You start to see what JJ can be, but you've got two guys that were the guy, and now you got them in this offense. You give Devon Dampier some extra stuff to look at, and then you think of what's already there with the Larry Simmons and Creed Whittemore, the zippers and whatnot. Like there's a lot to like and be excited about with the wide receiver room.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you this: what does Utah gain? Obviously, we got to talk about the tight end position, but what does Utah gain tactically, schematically, perception wise by moving from an offense that featured the tight end group to an offense that now features the wide receiver group, and then to go out in the portal and land these two guys specifically? What does that say? What does Utah gain?
Yeah, by focusing more on the offense on the outside, that's going to loosen and soften some of the things up in the middle where the offense has gotten bogged down at times for Utah in recent history. You look at Texas Tech loading everything in the box, and they have the resources to do it because the linebackers and the defensive line that they have. When Utah can't do anything on the outside because the talent's not there, with the wide receivers not getting separation, et cetera, the route running, whatever's not there, and then all you've got is the middle of the field. Now having those resources on the outside, that's going to help open some things up. The tight end position also, I thought for sure Utah would go out and make a splash signing on tight ends, and I know we'll get into tight ends, but then you look at where Utah spent its money in the portal. It's at the wide receiver position. I also think that's smart just because of what Utah's been able to do with the tight end position. So I think they're going out and figuring out what it takes to get a wide receiver room that looks good, feels good, plays good, wins games, and I think that's what this says.
Yeah, I think schematically, right, it's going to be interesting what sort of dynamic this does for the offense, because Utah was able to basically shrink the field because you had an offensive line that was just so dominant that they could push everybody around with a viable passing attack. That is what they were able to do last year. Now with the offensive line having to replace all 5 starters, replacing 2 first-round offensive tackles and Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu, you're going to need some schematic advantages where you spread the field out. You've got 2 receivers now in Scholes and Pagan that demand extra attention. They're going to have some gravity where they require some extra attention. And so schematically, it's going to help the run game. But I think from a perception standpoint, I think it's pretty significant. And obviously they've got to do it on the field, perform on the field, and that sort of thing. But there has been, a long time narrative around Utah football, around Kyle Whittingham, that I think you said this before we started recording. The negative recruiting around Utah is that quarterbacks go here to die, and receivers go here to die. And I think by what they've been able to do, bringing in Kevin McGivern, going out, getting another quarterback coach that has a proven track record, and Ryan Gunnarsson, then bringing back Dampier, bringing back Byrd, going out, adding Pagan, Scholes, adding them to a mix of Larry Simmons, Creed Whittemore, Tobias Merriweather, Dadron Zipperer, who's going to be running it back. Suddenly, that wide receiver room looks pretty promising. And so I think from a perception standpoint, next season, I think really has, an opportunity for Utah to start rewriting sort of the narrative around Utah offense and the long time, negative recruiting messages that programs were able to use. I think that above all else is why, Peg and Scholes were such big additions. They have experience under McGivern. Scholes doesn't have necessarily production with McGivern at OC at San Jose State in 2023, but he spent the year there, learning with McGivern, working in that room at San Jose State with him. And then he obviously had a great 2025 season there at San Jose State. Pagan obviously operating under McGivern up at Utah State. So to have that experience where these guys are familiar with McGivern's offense, that's going to help. So, individual grades, I think these guys both, I think Pagan is an A+, Scholes A+ as well, just kind of given everything that goes into it. I think those are the grades that those guys deserve. If you feel differently, argue with the wall.
I'm not going to argue with the wall. I'm not going to do it. I was gonna say A's. So good on you for saying A+, because I didn't want to be that guy. So I'm glad you were that guy for once, because I'm always that guy.
You are always that guy.
It.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Brother.
Yeah. And so obviously, like the question mentioned, right? Going from a featured tight end group where we've grown accustomed to, the tight end position being the featured group on offense. Now it's the wide receiver room. So Utah going into the portal, obviously you lose Dallin Bentley to the NFL to graduation. And he proved to be a really dynamic option for Utah in the passing game this season. Went into the portal. First, you nabbed Noah Benny, Jackson Benny's older brother. So you get the brothers on the team now. Noah, having returned after originally starting his career at Utah, spent the last couple of seasons up at Weber State. He's much bigger than he was while he was here. That has been something that I've had a couple sources mention to me that they've been impressed with Benny physically. There's a lot of excitement and intrigue around him now. So in terms of tight end, you add Benny. Then you go out, you add Will Money from Oklahoma State. He's a Springville product, spent some time up at Utah State as well. Both are, I think Benny is probably 6'4", floating with around 250 pounds. Money is kind of your leaner 6'3", 230 type. And so I think this is an interesting one because of what we're used to and what it's likely going to be. It's going to be kind of a secondary role. What do you make of what Utah did at the tight end position here, Bennett?
Yeah, I think they doubled down on their belief in their ability to develop at the tight end position. And I know that there's different personnel that's left the building, but there's also still, a ton of people who have been sponging over the years and are still around and have still, have pieces of that. And you look where Dalton Kincaid came from, right? Like came out of nowhere. And Dallin Bentley, probably a day two guy now is what it's starting to look like. So
yeah,
I mean, Utah's been able to do things with the tight end room, and I think they're more concerned with frame. What can you do physically, and probably attitude, culture fit, things like that. And I think they like a lot of what they saw in Noah Benny to be able to go out there this year and dominate. And it's funny to look at his little headshot. It looks almost like if you were to we cloned Jackson Benny and we just put a mustache on him, right?
Yep.
It's hilarious. But a lot of intrigue's a really good word for Benny, because that's what I feel there. And Will Money, local kid that's you hope that he's another dude that you can develop and get in there and some of the same things there that they see in him that they like for their tight end prototypes.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, agreed. Real quick grade here. What do you want to give Benny?
Yeah, I'll give a solid B. I like it when you look at all the things. I think Utah might have a sneaky diamond in the rough here, and I'm going to give it a B.
I agree with you there. Will Money, I'm going to go B-, C+, that borderline. I think nice addition to have for depth. You're going to need that, but that's what it is. But I like your take on Noah Benny. I think there's some intriguing potential there, some unseen potential, maybe even. So, a couple more on offense, and then we'll switch gears. We'll get to the defense side of the ball. But obviously, with Utah needing to replace all 5 starters, thought it would be a bigger point of emphasis where we'd see a few more bodies, or at least one more body. But they brought in 2, and so I think that says a lot about what they have in the room currently and sort of the belief that they have in those guys. But Utah goes into the portal. They nabbed Cedric Jefferson, a right tackle from Montana State, who was FCS champion. So that's significant. He played a lot of football this year, probably gained a lot of confidence, having the success that they did. And then another one, he was one of the first to commit. He may have been the first actually to commit in reality, maybe not announced, but the first to commit to Utah in the building. Isaiah Kemma, offensive lineman from Ohio State, was a freshman this year. He's a return missionary, so he's an older guy, but inexperienced, but some upside there. So what do you make of those 2 offensive linemen that Utah brought in through the portal?
Yeah, no, love the Cedric Jefferson pickup. It's a guy that played on a national championship Montana State team, so there's already like some of those intangibles that comes with bringing him in. Like he's probably a leader, right? And he knows what a good offensive line looks like, right? Because you don't win a national championship without a good offensive line. Especially when you get to that level, a lot of that is like trench play and whatnot. So great size, 6'5", 300. A lot to love about Cedric Jefferson. I think he might be that next dude for Utah on the O block. As far as Isaiah Kema goes, he took a chance on himself to go to Ohio State, right? It's not like he's the walk-on, not a scholarship player, Ohio State guy saying who. Like, he took a chance on himself at Ohio State. Didn't fall right on the depth chart, and he comes to Utah. Like, I mean, he still had a spot on the football team. Keep that in mind. He's still a roster player at Ohio State. So some of that, the size and some of the things there, they make total sense. So I think that's somebody that's great, that has potential, that you hope that Utah's able to develop into a stud on the O block.
Yeah, I think obviously it would have been nice to see Utah, bring in a couple guys with significant experience. But I actually really like the addition of Kema. I'm actually higher on that in terms of my personal grade than I am for Jefferson, surprisingly enough. But it's more so about his potential. I understand, right? There's probably going to be a learning curve. He's got to come in and prove himself. But just kind of talking to people, there's some expectations there for him that he can come in and change the conversation, at least in that offensive line room, and push for, opportunities. So in terms of individual grades, I'm going to give Kema a B+, and I'll give Jefferson a B. I think Jefferson is again, love the experience he gained this season. You can probably bet he gained a lot of confidence doing what he's doing, as a tackle. But I like Kema a little bit more here. But overall, just like what they did here, adding these two players.
Yeah, and I'll flip flop those. I'll go B+ for Cedric Jefferson, and then the B for Kema. So I think both solid additions. I think Utah knows what it's doing when it looks at the trenches. I'm with you. Would have expected like one big flashy piece, but
those are tough to come by.
Yeah, they save that to make sure that you get your quarterbacks and you get those wide receivers, right, and your running backs are good, and always good at developing the trenches. So in O block, you trust.
For sure. All right. Before we transition to defense, I've got a question for you. With these additions, do you feel like Utah changed their offensive ceiling potential, or do you feel like this was more about securing their floor?
Definitely raising the roof. You look at the home run hitters, wide receivers that they prioritized. I think that speaks to trying to elevate the pass game, to move toward more explosive plays, and some of that. So I think it's definitely an evolution, a next step in the offense, more than it is just maintaining status quo, which was great, right? So that's like a really hard thing to say. Like, how do you raise this Utah offense's roof? You go out, you get wide receivers that can make big plays, and you don't allow teams to beat you by stacking the box.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Where we're sort of talking about being surprised about them not going into the portal and making offensive line a big priority. Obviously, you would have loved to see that in conjunction with, two receivers coming in. But, given the fact that there are limitations on your resources, I think this does speak to, obviously raising the ceiling, raising the potential, but also the risk, right? And I think that's sort of the trade-off here, where instead of running it back with the same formula you've been running with the last couple of years, where you build through the trenches, you build through the run game. You're actually rolling the dice a little bit. You're going out, you're taking a chance on receivers and seeing what that can do for your offense, instead of going out, bringing in offensive linemen to pound the rock, going out, getting another big time running back in conjunction with Chavez Soto, or, going out, getting a couple of big body tight ends that, can come in and just block and help things there. Instead of doing that, where that maybe would have secured your floor, given the fact that you've got running quarterbacks in the backfield that are pretty dynamic and are going to allow you to continue to be pretty efficient. I think this speaks to Utah wanting to sort of change some things, wanting to change the identity, wanting to change the perception, the ceiling, all of that. Now, again, there's going to be risk there. There's going to be greater risk, where maybe things don't work out. But I think you're doing as best you could, bringing in guys that are familiar with McGivern and all that. I think they're making an informed bet on these players, finding success, translating after seeing what Ryan Davis was able to do, having the familiarity with the offense under Beck. I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic. So, all right, enough about the offense, because we've gone 40 minutes. We've got to probably power through the defense here, but I'm going to start with the question before we get into it. Would you rather have a high pressure rate defense that maybe is susceptible to the run, giving up consistent 4 or 5 yard run plays, or would you rather be a stingy run defense with, limited opportunities to get after the quarterback? Which would you rather be?
I'll take the stingy run defense, because nothing grinds my gears more than just getting chunked and chunked and chunked and chunked. Like the last 2.25 outings for this Utah team, like, pained me to the core. So,
yeah, it was tough. And I think, honestly, probably we've maybe taken the run defense for granted over the years. And I think this was a good reminder of just how tough Utah has been against the run and what it looks like when Utah isn't good against the run. And so I think what we've seen in the transfer portal this cycle is Utah go pretty heavy on interior defensive linemen. They brought in three? Jamal Wallace, Jaire Moe, Lucas Samsula, and then I think the other one was Ethan Day, a defensive end, and Nicholas Igwe, a JUCO kid. But those are the 5 linemen that you brought in, and I think all sort of help you along the interior of addressing some things, right? Addressing where you were susceptible, which was basically inside zone, right up the gut, right? Some power, some different things, some different blocking schemes, but you were susceptible right up the middle. And I think what we've seen is Utah go out, find some dudes that'll work hard. Lucas Samsula, again, I'm excited for him. 6'4", 305-pound body. Jaire Moe is kind of the 280-pound, 6-foot Seni Nuku guy, type of guy that can use his quickness, athleticism to knife into the backfield while still being, having the leverage, having the low center of gravity to maintain, his spot, his run defense as well. And just what it's going to do for the rest of that defensive tackle room. Carson Kafusi, Pupu Sepulona, having a rotation, a genuine rotation, I think is going to be really, 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 really good for that group. And then adding, Ethan Day and Nicholas Igwe to that defensive end room, who has to replace a lot with John Henry Daly and Logan Fano moving on. But I think Utah, we're kind of seeing what they're trying to accomplish here and reestablishing run defense dominance with this group coming in.
You speak to having a true rotation, and I'm 100% with that. Like the D tackle room just never got to a point where it was fully healthy, where you could have that fresh rotation. And those are some big boys, right? So like you got to keep their motors fresh and cooled down and whatnot. So it's important. So bringing in extra bodies, love seeing that. And Pupu, another year with Pupu. That's nice. Carson Kafusi, saw some great things out of him as a freshman. So you start to feel good about a room that just was so banged up that it never really got to shine.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, running through this group, just some quick individual grades. Moe, I'm giving an A minus. Freshman season produced. Really like what he's going to bring to the table. Go ahead.
No, I'm
Oh,
agreeing.
I thought you're. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something. Lucas Samsula, I'm going to give that a B plus. Again, sort of a young guy that's played some good amount of football up there in Wyoming. Tough, physical guy, a big body guy. I'm going to give that a B plus. Jamal Wallace, I'm interested in this one. This is one of those where he hasn't produced at Tennessee, but you like the size, 6'3", 315, like how he moves in some of these clips he's got. Lot to prove coming here, but I'm intrigued by this. I'm going to give that one a B minus. Nicholas Igwe, I'm going to give a C plus. Defensive end, 6'4", 255-pound guy. The QB Nigerian nightmare. Excited to see what that actually looks like on the practice field in spring. And then Ethan Day, I think, is a big-time pickup. I know that Colton Swan is absolutely fired up about Day. He was a big-time Day guy, much like Majerus being a big-time gay guy. Swan is a big-time Day guy. B plus. That's a throwback for the running Utes, that listen to this. The old timers, the old heads. That's a throwback. That's what that was, Bennett.
I love it. Grades. Moe, I like your A minus there. That's the signing I like the most of the group. I like anytime somebody, especially at a position like D tackle, that gets on the field and contributes early. That speaks to they're already there. Like the frame's good, the size is good.
Yep.
They're already contributing. They're just gonna keep growing potentially. And anyway, like that A minus. Go to. Let's see. I should have had these listed out for me. Lucas Samsola, good motor, as you've put it. Out of Wyoming, I'd give him a B plus. Good proven production. Somebody that's already been out on the football field. Jamal Wallace, put that as a B. Maybe even a B minus. You haven't seen anything really out of him up to this point in his career, but does have a good frame, and maybe a new environment's what he needs, an opportunity is what he needs. There's some definite intrigue there. And then on the ends, I like the Ethan Day pickup. I'll give that a B plus. And the Nigerian quarterback nightmare nickname alone, I feel like I've got to give him a solid B. And then some of his measurables, he could.
That's fair. That's fair. Excited to see it. All right, we don't need to talk about linebackers, bringing everybody back. Didn't necessarily add anybody through the portal. Good job, Colton Swan, hanging on to everybody there. Secondary, though, looks significantly different. Cornerback, safety room, some familiar faces, actually, so we don't need to necessarily worry there. But they did bring somebody in, Marcus Wemberly. He was one of the first to commit as well. And then they went pretty heavy at cornerback. And there's a theme here with the additions that they've made. So brought in Elijah Reed, cornerback out of Akron, brought in James Chenault, a cornerback out of Southern Florida, Earl Parker, a junior college cornerback out of, I think it's Hutch is where he's out of, and then Nicholas Brown, a cornerback out of Lamar. Pretty impressive collection of defensive backs for Utah coming in. All of these guys are at least 6 foot, and I think that's really significant. Most of these guys, I should say, Reed and Parker are 6'2". So adding size to that cornerback room, I was looking through some of the numbers, and missed tackle rates below 20% for Chenault, for Reed, and couldn't find anything on Parker. But I'm gonna believe that 6'3" at the JUCO level probably had a pretty good tackle rate. So I think that has been the big point of emphasis: getting taller, getting longer, getting better tacklers. I think was kind of the point of emphasis in that secondary. And so, what do you make of the individuals Utah brought in? And go ahead and give your grades with it as well.
Yeah, no, I thought I think anytime you get some length at in the secondary, that's awesome. Utah defense has done super well with guys that hit that 6'3" kind of mark, getting guys that are more physical and able to play some more of that man and just that's important. So I think you look at the level like where they're getting some of these guys from. It tells me that they're doing a lot of their homework. They're getting deep into the film study and the review and finding guys. You look at what Blake Cotton was just able to do. He came up from UC Davis, so it's not like you took somebody from some big program. Like they're getting nerdy in the field room with some of these guys that they're finding. So I'm going to give everybody a B because I think that's just a nice solid grade. And instead of like going out and just trying to question what's what, I think I'm excited for anybody that comes into the secondary for Utah. And I know that's homer-ish, but that's kind of that's the way it is, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, again, the emphasis being experience, you're adding guys that played 10 plus games this past season in Reed and Chenault, Earl Parker. Forgive me. Got some dust in my throat or something, man. Oh, it's got me. But emphasis on experience, given what you lost from the room, right? With Blake Cotton and Smith Snowden moving on. And to your point, right? Going into the film, finding guys with the traits that you like after seeing what Cotton did this past season, where it took him 4 or 5 games to really settle in. But man, once he found his footing, once he got comfortable with everything, he was really disruptive. And so, what's interesting is a couple of these guys in the secondary, Utah actually recruited pretty heavily coming out of high school. Marcus Wemberly, he was a recruit in the previous cycle, the same class that Nate Tillman. So he would have been a freshman this year. I remember Wemberly was a big time target for Morgan going back last year. So kind of unique there. And then going back to the 2022 cycle, Elijah Reed was a late bloomer that Utah pushed significantly for one of those December visits. They were hoping to get him on campus for an official visit in December. He was a guy that they felt like they uncovered. Unfortunately, he lands an offer close to home at Kentucky, ends up committing there to the Wildcats. He transfers two seasons later to Akron and turns out to be a pretty productive cornerback. Now, full circle, he comes to Utah now for his final year, and I think there's a lot of excitement about what he can be in that defensive secondary. So, like what they've done there, and overall, again, just kind of going back to our original talking point where, this, with everything that transpired, our expectations should have changed with what this transfer portal cycle was going to be, right? It was about retaining. It was about, stabilizing the current roster and then just adding the pieces to it to set it and get it right for 2026. So, good job by Morgan. Good job by the coaching staff to get in here, close the deal on some additions, hang on to key players and all of that. Overall, just feel good about this. Obviously, I think it changed where expectations were coming into this transfer portal cycle and what it could have been. Had it just been Kyle riding off into the sunset and Morgan taking over, I think the portal would have definitely looked a little bit different for Utah had that been the case. But obviously, you just got to roll with the punches, make the best of what you can, and that's what Morgan and Utah did. So any final thoughts before we wrap this one up? Because we've gone almost an hour, dude. Flies. Oh, you're muted. Oh, I got you. The mute button got you. It got you, dude.
It's been a while.
Yeah, dude.
All right. No. Final thoughts. I think Utah did a lot with a little this portal cycle, and there are a lot of curveballs that you couldn't have planned for it. So to the way that Morgan and company were able to get it done, shout out to Blecken for doing this under the circumstances that he, the hand he had dealt, and hope he lands somewhere nice on his feet, and and then excited to see what the new guy brings in as at the same time. So Off season's done. Looking forward to spring ball and all that stuff.
I'm glad you mentioned Blick, and that's where I was going to finish, was giving a nod to those guys, to Robert Blecken, Sam Morissette, Reggie Dunn. There are probably a handful more of other personnel staffers that will be looking for work or have work lined up. And these guys did a tremendous job kind of understanding what this was, understanding what was likely to come. You know, Morgan Scalley has wanted to remake things and kind of get his guys in there. And we've seen that now with the general manager being hired, Joe D'Orazio, who actually spent a year here at Utah in 2013. So there's familiarity with the program. But a tremendous job by Blecken, Morissette, Dunn, everybody else on that personnel staff to be professional, to finish strong, to get the job done, and to help Utah, piece this roster together, despite everything, despite all of the circumstances, the difficulties that they've probably experienced, mentally, right? Thinking of the stress that they were probably dealing with, wondering what's going to come next. Those guys deserve a ton of credit. They deserve appreciation for what they were able to do. We probably should have started with this, to be honest. I hope people are still listening to this at the end, because those guys deserve the acknowledgement. They did a lot. Obviously, Utah leveled up the talent under Blecken's watch as director of player personnel, and then transitioning to the general manager role with Sam Morissette taking over his role as well. So those guys deserve a round of applause. Probably a beer or two if you see them. And so shout out to those guys, but we'll go ahead, wrap this one up, put a bow on it. For myself, Steve Barrow, James Bennett, this has been, did I say James?
Roll with it, baby.
I just called you James. Shout out to Smoking You. Sorry, that's a bad insult if you know. We're gonna see inside joke. Yeah, if you know, you know.
We're gonna see if he's listening.
Yeah, we are. All right, dude. This is the Utah Blockcast signing off.